Welcome to this video on understanding your leadership style. You know, it was about 20 years ago and I was a young manager and my boss said to me, Terry, you need to develop your own unique leadership style. You need to find your leadership voice. And I think he saw me looking at other people and saying, oh, I'd like to be like them, or I'd like to be like them. And, you know, he was saying, you know, what you really need to do is to be yourself. And I thought it was great advice, but what I really didn't understand was, how do I make that happen? And so that's what this video is about. It's about helping you find your unique leadership voice. If you've ever heard the story of little Johnny comes home with his report card, and you see it, and you see 1A, 2 B's, and an F. And little Johnny's mother looks at it and says, what's this F, little Johnny? And the whole discussion becomes about how is he going to improve the F, no mention of the A or the B's. Well, little Johnny grows up, he gets to his performance appraisal, and his boss looks at his document, looks at him and says, John, you've had a good year. You know, your work with clients is excellent. You do a lot of great sales. You're hitting your target on your goals. But you know what? You have a detail orientation problem. So I want to spend the majority of this performance appraisal talking about how we're going to improve your detail orientation. An A, 2 B's, and an F, and his boss handles it the same way as his parents did. You know, we're all a lot like that. We focus on the negatives. But what I've realized that in order to find your unique leadership voice, you really need to know what your strengths are. So what Gallup has found is that there's a business case for focusing on strengths. When we're using our strengths, we feel like I'm good at what I do, my work is energizing, I look forward to my job, time goes quickly, I'm enjoyable to be around, and I treat customers and coworkers well. If we've ever felt like we were using our strengths, it's like this. So, you know, you're working on a project, you look down at your watch and you're like, oh my gosh, did 3 hours just go by? You know, you were probably in what we call like a state of flow, where you were really totally engaged and focused on your work. And that's what it feels like when we're using our strengths. And when we're not using our strengths, it feels like I don't excel at my work is tiring, I dread my job, and time drags on. So again, our goal, when we really find our leadership style, we're totally in our flow and we're using our strengths. So our strengths are made up of 3 areas: our talents, our knowledge, and our skills. Our talents are really determined by the synapses in our brain. So as we grow up to the age of about 16 to 20, we start to lose synapses. And the ones that remain that are really dominant would be our 4-lane highway. And those are our distinct way of seeing the world. So simply put, our synapses determine our talents. The second area of our strengths is our knowledge, and those are things that we've learned in school, things we've studied, our educational background, or things that we've learned through the school of hard knocks, you know, things that we've learned on the job. And then the third area of our strengths is our skills, and a skill can be defined as something that's unconscious competent. So when I got in my car today, I didn't have to think, okay, I got to put my foot on the gas, I got to, you know, get the car into gear. It was just something that I knew how to do. It was an unconscious competent thing. And that's what a skill is. It's something that we can do without even thinking about it. And so that combination of our talents and our knowledge and our skills are those things when we put them together. That's when we're really in our flow, and that's our strengths. So how do I determine what my talents are? Well, the process that you go through is you would go to an online site for Gallup, and you would go in to the StrengthsFinder 2.0 assessment area, and you would go in and take an assessment. It takes about 25 to 30 minutes, and after that you would go in and it would automatically generate a report for you that would determine your 5 top talents. Now what I really like about Gallup is that they started this process in about 2000, and over the last 10 to 13 years they've really evolved the assessment piece. So the Gallup tool is very affordable, and what I like about it is that they've evolved the process over the last 10 to 13 years and really focused on how do talents tie into leadership. And so the 4 categories that they've put those talents in is executing, strategic thinking, relationship building, and influencing. So let's take a look at those 4 different categories. The first category is the executing category. And leaders with dominant strengths in the executing domain know how to make things happen. They catch an idea and they make it a reality. An example of someone with strong executing talents is Wendy Kopp. When she was a senior in college at Princeton, she did a research paper on the inequity of educational opportunities in different cities. And so she started the Teach for America project. Well, right after her senior year, she raised $2.5 million. She had to interview 2,500 candidates to end up with 500 teachers. So her ability to execute was very helpful for her as a leader. The second style is influencing, and those who lead by influence help their team reach a much broader audience. They're always selling the team's ideas inside and outside the organization. And an example of a leader who had strong influencing talents would be the person who took over the Ritz-Carlton. There was a very successful leader at Ritz-Carlton for a number of years, and they really focused on the quality of the organization. And so when this person retired, the new person came in and they said, wow, you know, you're following Babe Ruth in the lineup. You're never going to be able to do what he did. And he said, well, I'm going to lead differently. And what he did was he took that Ritz-Carlton brand and he brought it out overseas. And he sold that quality brand to a larger audience. So again, two different styles, both very successful. The third style would be relationship building. And these leaders, they really lead through relationship building, and they're essential glue that holds the team together. So they have the unique ability to create teams. So they can get everybody rowing in the same direction and really work on the development of the people and focus on people in their organization. And then the final style is strategic thinking. And leaders with great strategic thinking strengths are the ones who keep us all focused on what could be. They stretch our thinking for the future. So an example of someone with strong strategic thinking skills is the CEO of the Best Buy organization. They're always having to innovate, always having to think about what's next for the organization. So you'd say, well, Teri, which style is the best style? And there is no right answer. There are no right or wrongs. The important thing for you to think about is, where are my talents? And how can I bring what I have to the marketplace and be successful as a leader? And I would say that there are as many successful leadership styles as there are leaders. So the importance is really understanding, what is your style? So how can I lead with my strengths? Well, let's just talk about what I've learned over the last 20 years. So I know that my style, my first talent and my most dominant talent is ideation. And so what I've learned about myself is that I have a strong creativity talent. I like to innovate and I like to think about, what could we do here? And in terms of response, people have always told me, Teri, you have so many great ideas, but I never really thought about that as a talent. The second area I have is belief. And so people who have a strong belief talent are very mission-minded. And so that's actually why I'm doing what I'm doing today. It's because I think it's important to develop future leaders. And I just have a feeling that there's a really strong core belief of mine, and that's a purpose for me. My third talent is in focus. And people who have a strong focus talent have a need to track results. They're always keeping score. My fourth talent is individualization, and that is where you really look at each person and their uniqueness, and you try to bring out the best in them. And then my fifth talent is the activator talent. And that's really, let's get started. It brings a lot of energy to a situation. And so what I've learned through studying these over the last 20 years is that I tend to do projects that there's a problem and that I can actually innovate to create a change in the organization. I'm mission-minded, so I need to work in an area that I'm strongly passionate about, and that I'm going to keep people on track, and I'm going to be able to bring a lot of energy. Maybe it's a big problem or a group that needs help. I can get people kind of going and moving in the right direction and get them in the right jobs. So the question I would ask you is, what are yours? And wouldn't it be great to know these early in your career so that you could get yourself in the right spot and really lead in the best possible way? It was about 2 years ago, and I started working with a leader of a large organization. And he said he wanted to work on some succession planning. So we started going through the strategic planning process. That's what he identified that he wanted to work through. And so as I started to plan that project, I knew that the first thing we needed to focus on was core values. And so he was a pretty hard-charging guy. So I said, well, here's the deal. We're going to meet with your team. And the first exercise is going to feel kind of touchy-feely. But trust me, I know what I'm doing, and this is important. So he was really good. We worked with it. And so the first meeting, we sat down with his management team of about 6 people. And I said to them, pretend that you can't talk, that nobody here can communicate. All we can do is observe other people's behaviors. So they had to think about who in this organization best represents what's great about this organization based on their behaviors. And I said, it can't be anybody in this room. So they had to write the name of 5 people. So I went around the room and I said, okay, so who's the first person? I said, well, Bill. I said, okay, let's write Bill. And what's great about Bill? Well, he is like he works from the minute he gets here to the minute he leaves. Just strong work ethic. I said, great, okay. So work ethic. I said, okay, who next? Betty. Okay, well, what is it about Betty? Well, Betty is just really responsible. She will follow through. I tell you what, she will not leave until that work is done. So I said, great, okay. And then who else? Well, Judy. Okay, so what about Judy? Well, no matter what needs, like if a job changes, she's always willing to learn and really grow. So as the company has grown over the years, she's always the first one to really, be willing to work through the challenge and be able to grow. And so as we went around the room, we filled up the whole flip chart, and themes started to emerge from this group. And so they started to look at that, and they're like, yeah, these top 3 things, they're really who we are. They really are, represent what's great about our organization. I said, okay, so why would we go through this touchy-feely exercise? And I thought, well, what happens if the boss leaves? And the new boss comes in, and he doesn't know anything about this, and he doesn't have any of these. As a matter of fact, he's kind of doing the opposite of these. How do you suppose that's going to affect the organization? People are going to quit. People aren't going to like him. They're going to start to disengage. They're going to pull away from the mission of the organization. And so they really understood the power of core values for an organization. So the same thing is true of our core values individually. And so as I was conducting a webinar last week for my leadership program, the Mentor Me program, I asked all the participants to look at the list of core values, and from that list, take the top 6 that would most represent you or what your beliefs are, your core values. And then they were asked to get down to 4, and then they were finally asked to determine what are the top 2 values that most represent who you are. And so we went around the room, and of course most of them were different. Each person was different. And I explained that my top 2 values are passion and credibility. And so what that passion core value means is that I have a strong intensity for my work, that I need to have people around me that are engaged, that really care about their work. The second value is credibility. And if I say I'm going to do something, that means I'm going to do it. And so it would be helpful for the people who work for me to know that if they came in and they kind of had a devil-may-care attitude and they didn't follow through in what they said they were going to do, that probably wouldn't work for me. And the opposite is true as well, is if I didn't know what their core values were, I might be violating those or stepping on those, and that's going to really affect our relationship. And so the whole group kind of came away with this understanding that, yeah, this has really given me clarity on who I am as a leader and what's driving my behavior. So last night I was at a Bible study on the book of Matthew, and we were talking about the story where Jesus multiplies the loaves and the fishes. And so he says there's this crowd of 5,000 people, and Jesus says to his disciples, well, feed them. And they're like, what are we supposed to do? We don't have anything. We don't have anything. He said, well, see what you have. So they looked at what they had together, and they said, we have 5 loaves and 2 fishes. How is this going to work? And he said, well, just go ahead and start. And of course, I think most of us know that story. It's multiplied, and the whole crowd of 5,000 is fed. And so as I thought about that, I thought, that's kind of similar to our talents. Here we are. I have 5 talents and 2 core values. how am I supposed to make a difference in the world? And so the story last night was, commit yourself, apply to using what you have, and the rest will take care of itself. So I don't know who you are, and I don't know what your religious affiliation is, and that doesn't really matter. I think the important thing is that you have potential. All of us have potential, and we have to take what we were born with, we have to take those talents, we have to take those beliefs that we have, and we have to put them out there in the world. And when we do, we're going to really understand why we're here and what our purpose is, and what we can accomplish. So my advice to you at the end of this video is to take a strengths assessment. Figure out what those talents are. Go back to the list in the video, identify what your 2 core values are. Figure out who you are as a person, and when you do, you can make a difference in this world.